Hello and welcome to It's All Blakademik. Myself, Jordan, your host, and I've got another debate and I've got another strong panel of guests here. We have Scarlett, Dane, Sia, Joel, and Jay. How are we doing, guys?
Good.
Everyone nice?
Blessed.
Yeah, nice.
Always.
Good. You're
Always.
nice. I'm nice. Right. This week, I want to talk to you guys about the subject of representation of black people on TV. If we feel there's enough of it, if we're happy with the quality of it, and how if you don't feel there's enough of it, we can improve upon that. And I want to have a general chat about our people on TV, because I don't think there's enough of it, and I think what we do have, we could be doing a lot better with it. Let me start with you, Joel, on this one. Do you have a particular issue with the amount of representation there is on, let's start with mainstream TV, of black people across the board?
Yeah, definitely. We need more, and that's it, really, in a nutshell. It's I find that sometimes you get caught up in this whole, it's improving, and then before you blink, there's still not enough. So it's almost as if that when there's an increase in black representation on screen, it reaches a point where it plateaus, and somebody somewhere proactively cuts, the amount of numbers that you can see. So we have peaks and troughs, and keeps us in this cycle of we're achieving but we're not. So I think with the proliferation of channels, it gives greater opportunity for us to go on and get onto mainstream TV, but I still think there's a lack of understanding on the other side of some of the talents and skills that we bring.
So I was looking, Jay, across all kind of areas of television and some of the bigger shows, and I wanted to find out, okay, how many black people do we have in lead positions across different genres on TV? So I'm going to rattle through a few here, which I've made a note of. So if we start with some of the biggest programs of this year and some of the most highly rated programs, I'm a Celeb was Anton Deck, 2 white people. Deck has some highly publicized problems we know. He stepped down. Replacement, Hollywood Willoughby. No black person there. The World Cup, correct me if I'm wrong here, you're a sportsman. Jason Mohammed was the only black person in a senior presenting position across ITV and BBC during the World Cup's coverage. Strictly Come Dancing, Tess Daly and Claudia Winkleman. On their sister show, it's Zoe Ball. When Bruce Forsyth stepped down, we had great presenters, could have filled that role. No one. X Factor, Kane Thornton, Dermot O'Leary, Ollie Murs and Caroline Flack. Those are just 4 of the biggest programs across TV. I'm going to go through some more in just a little bit, but do you agree with Joel that there is a serious issue with the amount of black people we have fronting and presenting some of the biggest shows on our television screens?
I think the issue runs more deeply than just what you see on TV, because we've had black news presenters for many years, and it doesn't change how we're represented through news programming. So in other words, you have people who confront things, and sometimes that does do a thing in terms of you can see visually, you can see people presenting these programs. But I think the issue goes deeper, because it's the people behind the scenes that are making those decisions. So for me, I think as Joel rightly pointed out, we just go round in circles where it goes through waves, and I think it probably depends on who those people are behind the scenes at the time that are pushing certain things, and once those people leave their jobs and move on, then you have the decline again. It's not a continual thing, which means that years later things haven't improved. When you do a compare and contrast, things are pretty much the same as they've always been. So of course there could be more people presenting our programs, of course there could be, but they don't develop those people. So Holly Willoughby, the Strictly presenters, all the people that we don't have to go through the list again, but for all those people, there was a development process of those people, and there are people who they're at that level now because they started presenting shows years ago.
There was an investment 10 years before that.
Yeah, exactly. And so now you see them presenting Strictly, it's because they've had a nice, rich heritage of presenting shows, and there is no pipeline like that for black presenters. Literally, you have Reggie, and Reggie's done really well, but so Reggie, I remember Reggie on children's TV, and then he did some radio and Top of the Pops, and he's developed himself, and that's something that he's taken on and he's done himself, and he's had a brilliant career in that great trajectory, but there are no other Reggies. And then you have Ade as well, who's come through the journalism route. So there are a few people, but it's not consistent, and it's not across the genres. You'll find it more maybe in the documentary space and less so in the Ent space. Do you see what I mean?
I do.
And so all the shows that you named there are all Ent space shows, and there is definitely a lack of us, you know, but it's not just black faces, it's anyone who is not that kind of mainstream, you know.
Of course, I want to stick to kind of black people in particular. And you mentioned news. Dane, I've got a list of people on news, and I think it's important that we see, if you're a national news program, that we see presenters that reflect the nation that they're presenting news to. So I've got here Clive Murray, BBC News anchor, Charlene White, who no longer does the 10, Claudia Liza Amar, who's the C5 news anchor, Jeanette Kwache, Sean Fletcher, Gamal Fambula, Raggy Omar, and Hugh Wozencroft. Bar, I would say, Claudia, none of those presenters are what you would say flagship presenters of any of those news programs. Is that another area where we need to really be penetrating and having black people presenting the news and really having Trevor McDonald, another one of those, for example.
And don't forget Moira.
Yeah,
and Moira, yeah. Who you could, when you thought of those
and
people.
And yourself.
Well, you know, but even I'm in that kind of tier 3 of presenters, but these are not people that when you think of BBC News, you don't really think of Clive Murray first and foremost. No. Do you know what I mean? He's
maybe Moira. I mean, I think I wouldn't even focus on newscasting being an issue where we have a lack of representation. I think really when it comes to the news, my issue would more be from the editorial of the newsroom and maybe being in editorial positions as opposed to, because it doesn't necessarily matter who is the vehicle for the presenting the news. It's really what the news is and where their maybe their facts come from. So I think that's really the issue, is that it's not just a question of our representation in front of the camera, it's also on the other side as well. So I think that's a large part of where the issue comes from. So in news, I would say editorial. So far as our representation with like television and TV shows, I think that's never improved. And while we do have crest and trough in terms of aesthetic, I think one issue is in terms of representation is nuance. In that, I'd say, so as a black man, you are represented as either a boy or an uncle in this country. And by that I mean, as a boy, you're the typical quintessential black man you see on TV is a perpetual adolescent, like your preoccupations are with your crepes and fried chicken and your garments from JD Sports.
Regardless of your age.
Regardless of your age.
What he's saying, as a boy.
And then on the other hand, you have like uncle, where you're old and non-threatening and almost asexual in terms of like Trevor McDonald, where you have this kind of refined air of sophistication and being learned, but at the same time, you can't be considered a heartthrob, or like it's almost like you're almost like a robot, so to speak, a dignified robot, kind of Morgan Freeman kind of archetype. And which means that there's this big gulf between if you are a black person where you pay your mortgage, you pay your taxes, you raise your kids, and you are from this age from like 28 to let's say as far as like 58. There is no kind of fair or representation or any kind of programming which caters to you. Because when you reach a certain age, I don't want to watch youngers. Because I'm not a child, it doesn't apply to me. Not everyone's reality involves like, what crepes you have and stuff like that as well.
Well, I want to come to Tame in just a minute, but as Scarlett, as someone who does front and present a program on television, what was your route to get into that stage like? And do you see your equivalent who aren't black as having an equally difficult and elongated journey to get to that point?
I think for me, I was very blessed with this opportunity, first of all, to be able to present the show, because I've watched Place in the Sun for years before I was on it, and I've never seen someone like me on the show. So I guess in a way it's like, this could be a bit of a risk for them to take someone like me, but I'm glad they took the risk, because since doing it, I would meet people and, be them black people, white people, like, you're really good on the show. And sometimes people are surprised by it. I'm like, well, why are you surprised? I got the job because I do property development on the side. You do have to have an expertise in property. And I went and I did a good screen test and I got the job because I was good at what I did. Okay, yes, I'm black, and yes, I'm different to the sort of people that you do see on the show. And I kind of feel like, in a way, maybe I am standing up for my people. I am being the face of my people that don't have to be worried about their trainers or their crepes, or don't have to be on the Channel 10 news. BBC One News at 10 o'clock or whatever. So I think it wasn't difficult to get the job. It's difficult now trying to keep going. I feel like
the next level is
exactly.
Okay.
I want to do entertainment, that's where I've come from. But you see the same faces, you see the Anton Deck, you see the Holly Willoughby, you see the Emma Willis. That's great, but guess what? I can do that as well. It'd be great if you gave me the opportunity, but no, she's the Channel 4 girl that just does property. well, no, but I can do other things.
It's funny because normally when it comes to jungle, they can't wait to associate us with it. Now, when you're in the jungle, you're a celebrity, we're not involved. Isn't that strange? Normally when it's dancing, that's what they associate us with. When it's Strictly Come Dancing, Strictly none of us. Isn't that strange?
So it is a tricky one. I feel like where I'm at the moment, I'm kind of, it's hard to get to the next level. And I feel like the only way maybe I can do that is to do reality TV or something. I don't really want to go down that route.
Yeah.
So it's a bit of I'm kind of stuck in a place at the moment where I'm not sure how to get to that next point.
So the biggest show at the moment that's probably in terms of being current, that some would say represents a big part of youth black culture, would be Channel 4's The Big Narstie Show, which has just finished, I believe. They've just finished their first season. Sia, let me get your first impressions of that show, and if you feel, first of all, you liked it, and if you felt that it was a representation of a part of black culture. Was you happy with what you saw and how they were represented, they being Mo Gilligan and Big Narstie?
Okay, I'm very 50-50 on The Big Narstie Show. So I'm very happy to see The Big Narstie Show because Big Narstie is an example of someone who has come from the bottom and has not changed. His personality has not changed, the way he speaks, has not changed anything about himself to cater to a white audience. He's kept his authenticity. Mo is on the flip side. Mo did obviously comedy online on Instagram and stuff like that, where he was mimicking white culture, which is something that we don't really see. And obviously they've been able to transcend it into TV. Now my problem with transcending into TV using black culture is that it almost becomes, for me, a form of entertainment for white audience. So a white audience are looking at you as they did in the slave times and using you as, make me laugh, or speak in a certain way, because when you speak slang, it makes me laugh. So you are entertainment. I'm watching Big Narstie, and some of them are living vicariously through, you know, Mo and Big Narstie and all these other black people that they would normally not see on Channel 4 at that time. The positive, I would say, is that it does open up minds of the, let's say, a white audience that's watching that's never had the opportunity to watch someone like Big Narstie or watch. So Big Narstie comes across as, I would say, for someone who hasn't watched him before, he's a stereotypical black male in terms of he's big. He comes across, that already gives off that negative connotation of being aggressive. Whereas when they watch him, they're seeing, oh, okay, maybe he's not aggressive, although they're still trying to push that stigma onto him, I think. I feel like it opens up that audience's mind. So I'm very 50-50. I feel like it's an amazing thing for Mo and for the scene and for Narstie. They get to feed their families off legitimate incomes, which is very difficult for a lot of people. They're on a massive channel, they're on Channel 4, which is amazing. But I do feel like it comes off very entertainment style. I do feel like they, white audiences are clinging onto our culture and almost buying our culture and then gentrifying it to make it something that can be marketed
packageable to them.
But
exactly,
that's nothing new, is it?
it.
That's just what, because our culture is so rich, whether it's comedy, whether it's music, whether it's fashion, whether it's whatever you look, you know, we are rich creatively. So that's a natural thing that's going to happen. It's been happening for decades. When it arrives on Channel 4, nothing is going to change. You know what I mean? Because the majority of the audience that they're pointing to are not black. The majority of the audience will be white audiences, and they bear that in mind. I mean, it did do well for black audiences, young black audiences.
It was up on member viewers from the BAME community.
Yeah, that's because it was zero before. Do you know what I mean? So it's like you've got.
But in that slot specifically as well.
On that slot, it was down. What was there before?
You have to
Right,
take it,
of
people
course.
are not watching it.
But
because
in terms of the audience that they were going for,
Yeah, the BME audience.
the BAME audience, it was an increase, and it was an increase in share. But in numbers, it wasn't masses of, it wasn't huge numbers, but it did better, I think, than they probably expected it to.
Let me ask you a question though. If they sold it as the blackest thing on TV, it was.
So they sold it on there.
Yeah, were they inviting white people to watch it? I mean, I take your point fully, and in terms of you know, black people being up there to entertain white people, but they proactively called this the blackest thing on TV. Big Narstie was very vocal about that. You know, Jay, I zoom out a little bit when you see a concerted effort by a broadcaster like Channel 4 to embrace what we do. Right, I zoom out a little bit because I don't focus on that, because I asked Big Narstie that question if he thought that, you know, they were setting him up to laugh at him rather than with him. We've been laughing with him online for years. We know his brand of humour. We get it, right? He don't need to sell it to us, but they do need to sell it to that wider audience for it to be a success. So when I look at that and I think, okay, that is what it is. So let's come out of it a little bit. They're making a concerted effort to put Robbie Lau, Robbie Lau, who's Arsenal Fan TV. There's a block of people who have cultivated a following online that chicken connoisseur TV is trying to understand. Our call, this is the part of our call they cannot buy. So how can we understand it and work with these guys? They're not going to get it right all the time because they don't understand us. It's so in the obvious.
They're literally buying a product that they know is doing well with an audience that they struggle to attract generally, and so it's like a package that's already working, and they just pick it up and then just
trying to transport it.
Hope that it's going to translate.
And I also think that out of we know who's got shows coming. You know, Big Mo's got a show coming. Big Narstie's have one. Ping, Robbie. There's a couple others I know are in the pipeline. 6 or 7. If one of them comes through as this big, all singing, all dancing star that can be sold to all different marketplaces and demographics, they can probably consider this a win. This little period, because one of the things I'm interested in is what were the numbers in these graveyard slots prior to them saying, okay, let's make a concerted effort over a period of a year to see where our black, what these guys can do. See if we can translate that online success into TV. TV is very systemic. It's very, cornflakes, milk, bit of sugar. It's the same as it's always been. And because if they would get too radical with it, we wouldn't take to it. It was interesting listening to Jonathan Ross on the last show talk about how Maverick, not total comparison, not like with like, but talking about how Maverick, his first show on Channel 4 was for the time, and that people didn't take to it, but invariably over a period of how many years, he was the guy that stuck. I wouldn't be surprised if the same strategy was employed. There was 6 or 7 people they were trying a thing with. He was the one that come through, and I think that's what's happening now with Channel 4. Better than the BBC starting a channel and saying we're gonna have a platform for all this content, you guys, big budgets also, and then running with it for how long did BBC Free last as a terrestrial channel?
Jay, how long was BBC Free?
How long was it?
BBC Three was for a while.
BBC Three was for a while.
How long?
2003.
Yeah, so they gave it
15.
That's 15 years.
15 years, and that's online. And there's no market, no budget, nothing, no promotion.
So if we stick with Big Narstie because it's the most current show, Did everyone first of all like the show? Did anyone have any issues with the show per se?
You had loads of issues.
Loads
Loads of issues. The first one was definitely cut up to make him look like a bit of a, with Ed Sheeran. They thought that would pull in all the viewers. That I don't know from a production point of view what you thought, but I just thought there were too many awkward moments that they could have filled. Was that done on purpose? What was all that about? There was nothing seamless about it. They got better, but then sometimes I think, did they start so poorly to get better? So there were loads of issues, but the fact is that he shone. The duo shone. They did their thing, and I think is a season 2 been
submission for next year. Yeah,
job done.
So does anyone have an issue with some of the guests that were on that show? Because my kind of thinking was, and I spoke to a friend about this as well, the success of Big Narstie and more so Mo the comedian is that they cultivated an online audience very quickly on a very, very big scale, because a lot of people have turned away from TV over the last 5 to 10 years. So TV has gone to those 2 people and said, listen, you guys have got massive followers, we like what you do, we're going to give you a TV platform to do what you do. But then by bringing on some of the guests that they brought on, I don't personally care about Jonathan Ross, and I don't know many people that know me as well.
He went to my school, so I care about him.
Okay, well,
East London.
I'm watching somewhere else. I don't personally care about the other people, David Schwimmer. These are not people that I thought were appropriate for that.
He lives in Leighton as well, so I got up in East London.
They missed the point for me. It was the audience have left TV. Don't go to the guests that are the reason why we've left TV. The same old
generic
guests.
But at the same time, I'm interested in that though. Sorry.
This is why I'm saying, like, I haven't watched all the episodes of Big Narstie, so don't shoot me, but this is why I'm saying I feel like with black people, it's always a form of entertainment. So I feel like when, instead of getting, I don't know, let's say someone who's a black MP, for example, we won't get someone of the same caliber that we would get a white person. We would get Krept and Conan. They're artists. It's entertainment. Yeah. Like, everybody that we put on some form of mainstream TV is doing entertainment. We won't get Akala to go up on there to speak, or it would be difficult to get Akala on there because they don't want to hear what Akala has to say, or he projects a certain image that is not necessarily the image that they want to be marketed. Instead, we're going to carry on using.
Yeah, same as you said about aesthetic. So it's like a good point where, and you know, we could argue that maybe Big Narstie, that's not his forte to necessarily be having, you know, discourse with a David Lammy or a Una King or like a Chuka Umana. It might not necessarily be that his arena, but then for me, it's what it goes back to is like, while you could see they were trying to find their feet with the formats and stuff like that, there was like one episode where there's so many guests on, like at one point, Simon Webb was in the green room from Blue, and then he was out in the front. I'm like, weren't they supposed to interview him? And it didn't really happen. So I guess they're trying to like saturate with guests and have these opportunities. But it's like you said, if we're gonna have a talk show which you're trying to endear yourself to a black or diaspora audience, then you know you want to have that same kind of range of guests. Other than I don't just need to see guests that are musicians and stuff like that. It's like because as I'm saying, because then what happens is that again the quintessential image of black people in this country remains among this holy trinity of sports, drugs, and entertainment.
But then that's putting the thing is that that's what happens when you just have the one show.
Yeah, so I mean
because you've just got one show, you're trying to cram all kinds of different genres and people, and it's not going to work, and it's not his SP.
Yeah,
so,
it never works.
So
What
you find is that when you have the one show, the spotlight is on that one show.
Always.
Whereas when it's not about our community and it's about the general sort of TV landscape, there's lots of different strands. You've got the entertainment show, you've got rich documentaries, you've got.
I want to pick up on that. I do, yeah.
So
there's more shows about cupcakes than there are about black people in history. There have been more shows about sponge cake and foxes and robots. Robots have had more shows in the last 20 years than black people have had. And aliens have as well.
So Scarlett, is that the problem in that they seem to be saying, we know that we're funny, we know we can sing, we know we can dance, but we can we get a program about architecture or about art or about politics? We don't have any shows that show us in any other light beyond entertainment. And shows like yours, for example, you're a rare example of someone that's doing something that's not to do with music or being funny. Is that a big problem? We don't have. This is all well and good. These shows are good to some degree, but we have nothing else.
We absolutely don't have anything else, which is why I love this show. It's all academic because you have people on here that you're welcome. You've got people on here that are intelligent, that don't just do singing and dancing and entertainment. We do a bit of everything, but we are intellectual as well. And I think maybe it is that certain people won't tap in and watch a black panel for some reason being intellectual or talking about politics or talking about academics or talking about those sort of things because they just want to watch and be entertained. That's how it's always been from history. We are entertainers. We sit there, we dance for our food, we do this, we do that. Actually, no, there's a lot more to us. Like, no one ever thought I was a property developer. Yeah, I do property development, but why does that surprise you? Like, average Joe can do it, so why can't I do it?
Indeed.
But I also think, I don't know if you're going to touch on this, John, but I think that we've kind of, our starting point is so basic in terms of where we're starting now, when we've got a rich heritage of TV programming that's got us to this point, and I just think that we have regressed, if anything else, rather than built on what's been there before. Because it's 2018, isn't 1975? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I'd like to add to that point as well, because I also find that a lot of the archival programs don't feature stuff we've done historically. Unless you have London Live, you're not going to see reruns of the Desmonds or the Real McCoy was a staple part of most of the diaspora's kind of viewing and influence. That I don't see that on Dave or UK Gold or UK TV. So channels that are full of like archival shows.
To bury that.
Like how come you never see that? Like even Pork Pie had a spin-off. And so I just feel like it's the other issue again is the fact that after these things are made and we even create, it's like, why does this stuff never resurface? Like, it's
because
no
it was
rerun.
made for the time. It was like someone complained and said, "Oh, let's just fill this gap," and then that goes. But like when I had a conversation with Jordan about this before, and there was programs that Jordan had never even heard of. So Channel 4 had a rich heritage of this. So Channel 4 had a program called No Problem, and No Problem was a completely black cast. I think there was one Chinese lady in it, but it's pretty much a black cast with black writers, and it was produced by the Black Theatre Company and Charlie Hanson, and that was a black family whose parents had gone back to Jamaica and left them to raise themselves basically because they were all sort of teenagers or whatever. And this was a comedy on Channel 4 on prime time, I think on a Friday night or something. Before that you had
the A-Force as well.
Yep, you had the Fosters, which was Lenny Henry was in that, and Norman
Chef. Even Chef was a good show.
Chef was a good show.
That was a great show, and a highbrow show as well. And again, it's like Lenny Henry again was actually showing probably with more superior skills in acting, and it's like weird that show would have been like prefaced stuff like Kitchen Nightmares and all these shows now where chefs are cussing people, and that show was kind of like a scripted version of that. So the way that this stuff doesn't tend to surface again.
I want to just touch on two quick final things: investment behind the scenes, but also online. So you have a platform online, Sia. Does that seem to be now where a lot of black people are going to make their content and like this, get their stuff out there, because TV will not embrace them, TV won't take risks, TV won't be innovative enough to get shows out there that don't fit a particular TV box?
I don't necessarily feel as a creative that we use our platforms to create content because of TV not, being diverse enough or whatever. I think we're creating content on our platforms because, one, it's easier, it's more accessible. We have full creative control over our platforms and what we put out and how we put it out. I feel a lot of creatives that are creating content, so vloggers and stuff like that, possibly the end goal is to get endorsements, but I do not feel like a lot of vloggers are looking to get TV shows and stuff like that, because we understand the dynamics of how your show will potentially change. I was part of a show that was supposed to get picked up, and I know there was a lot of stuff around getting picked up and what they wanted to change and what they wanted, and just bringing it down to little things like us not being able to swear unless we're on at a certain time, and those type of restrictions, which automatically takes away our authenticity if we're having to filter what we say. So I don't feel like, for me personally, that my platform is something in the long term that I'm looking at getting into TV, or is that a boundary, or if that has anything to do. I just think now we're just go-getters, and we're just like, look, I've got a camera, I've got a phone, just do it and off my own back, and whatever happens from it happens, but this is the goal and I have to make it happen, because if you sit down waiting on, for example, Channel 4 or BBC, it might not happen for you. That's just the reality. It happened for Big Narstie, but he's been grinding for years before it happened for him. And I know everyone's saying thing with Mo and Michael Dapper, like everyone thinks, because we just saw the end result, and so everyone thinks it was like, Michael Dapper's been putting out content, exactly, and Dapper's been putting out content for ages. So it just goes to show that you can get there, but it is a long process, and in the meantime, before you reach there, I feel like it's just about yourself and applying yourself to put out what you can for everyone to see.
It's a new route in as well, because before there was online comedy, there was radio comedy, and all of the comedians that you see that people are household names on the BBC and Channel 4, many of them started in radio comedy, and I think now you've got online. I think that is today's version of that,
contemporary version,
where people can try and hone their craft.
So let's try and finish on a solution, Joel. I think we probably all would agree Jay's initial point at the top was about the lack of investment in black people behind the cameras, decision makers. How do we have to wait for one of these shows, Paying Life, Big Narstie Show, to blow before we think that they'll take a risk on commissioning 2 or 3 more? Or what can we do as a black community to ensure that it's not just a one-off and a flyby?
Yeah, no, we need to sit down with the powers that be, the ones that make the decisions, and ask them what their agenda is first, because it's all very well headbutting, the wall to try and break it down, but if they don't want you to on the other side, then there's no point. So I think we need to continue to foster our own platforms, make them the go-to place for that content, and just show these mainstream bosses and decision makers that actually we don't need to tune into what you're doing. We've got our own, and I think that's the only way that they're going to listen, because we could sit here and say, okay, let's lobby and lobby and lobby, but if they've already decided 20% of the output's going to be BME and that's it, that's the ceiling, no matter what happens, and the next person that takes over the watch is left a note in the drawer and it says no more than 20%, and the next person and the next person, because that person is never going to be black.
And that lobby just takes away from creative time.
Yeah, we've got things to
do our own thing.
Agreed. We can watch anything we want now. We don't have to watch their channels. That's the power that we do have. So let's exercise that.
Guys, thank you very much for your time once again.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.